Hi, Rebecca.
Hey, how are you?
I'm dealing with stupid tech issues. So pissed off. I'm too old for tech.
You're not too old for tech.
I hate it.
This is the problem with where we're at. A lot of us start to feel in our 50s that, we might be looking for something else. And by that I mean, you might be doing a career, but you're starting to go, hey, I'm not really feeling 100% fulfilled. Maybe I need a little bit of a change.
And change is also really super scary, like any kind of change. Like it's just terrifying what's out there. What staying with something that's comfortable, something that's known is always the easier route, even
Yeah.
if it's not necessarily the best thing for you.
Right. So I think both of you and I can relate to this because we've done some career changes, we've tried other things. And sometimes it doesn't have to be a complete shift to a new job. It might be just adding something in that is giving you some sort of, what's the word, like joy, but, satisfaction. I will say that I think you and I were both feeling this last year when we were like, let's start a podcast,
Exactly.
right?
That was part of what we were doing. We wanted to move into something new, and we put in a lot of work to do it because that's what it takes to kind of go through these transitions. It's a lot of energy, it's a lot of work, it's time. It's not just we didn't just sit down and go, "Oh, hey, let's do a podcast." It was something that was kind of, we had talked about it for a long time, but was it going to succeed? Was it going to be worthwhile? Is anyone actually going to listen to us? So it was kind of scary to get into that. But once we started doing it, it's really something that we both enjoy. It's like our baby, and we really love doing it.
And it's an
But just
adventure. It's an
that
adventure,
part,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So, to give us some direction on transformational change, Kate Hilton is here today. And Kate is no stranger to reinvention herself. She has had prior careers in law, university administration, publishing, and also she has worked in major gift fundraising, right? Like lots of stuff.
Kate is also a best-selling author. She's written 4 novels: The Hole in the Middle, Just Like Family, Better Luck Next Time, and the newly released Bury the Lead that she co-wrote with her friend Elizabeth Renzetti. And the best part is Kate is a registered psychotherapist whose work with clients focuses on exactly this: transitions and transformative change.
Rebecca. Hi, Lana. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you so much for coming to talk to us because everyone wants to know.
I
Right.
love talking about this stuff, so I'm really happy you asked me.
We know that you have done many of these transitions yourself in terms of career, but can you give us an idea in terms of your practice, your psychotherapy practice, and working with clients? What exactly do you do? What is how do we describe the job?
I'm really interested in transformative change. And despite the fact that societally we think a little bit about midlife as this trough where, it's sort of a moribund, depressive, dissatisfied kind of stage of life, my experience is that it's not really that. It's a period where people undergo um, a, a, a a period of reflection, right? So it's a time when in our teens and 20s and 30s and even 40s, beginning of the 40s, we've been running through trying to hit a lot of milestones typically, right? We've had specific goals, we've been trying to hit them. And in our later 40s and into our 50s and even our 60s, right? It's developmentally a time where we kind of harvest all of that experience and wisdom and start to think about how are we going to move into the stage of legacy, the stage of, really focusing our energies towards meaning and purpose. And it also coincides with a period, right, where our bodies are changing, where if we've had children, our children are aging out of the home. If we have parents who are alive, the elder care train may be rolling into the station, right? And so a lot of different forces are at work to make it a period where it can feel quite unsettled. And so when I work with people at this stage in life, I'm really interested in exploring with them, where are the zones of discomfort, right? What's feeling sticky for them? What are they feeling stuck in their life? Are they feeling anxious in their life? Are they feeling like maybe they haven't realized their potential in some way? Is there a dream of their younger self that's been lost along the way? We're really exploring, where are they in their life and what feels unsettled to them. And what what do they feel like if therapy were successful? What would they like to be able to say to me? Right. I now feel X or Y. And then, so that's where we start.
Okay, so I'm gonna let's do a little role playing. I'm coming to you and I'm gonna say, Kate, not only do I feel stuck, I feel like I crazy glued my feet to the pavement, right? That's obviously this metaphor, but I feel like when you said that, that really speaks to myself. And I think Lana as well, because we've had these conversations. Um, and why is that? Is it because we have all these responsibilities and so it's hard to kind of go, ooh, it feels very selfish or something?
Right. So yeah, so it's partly that. It's partly that we've become at this stage of life where typically we're carrying a lot around with us in our little, saddlebags, right? We've collected a lot of people and a lot of people who, maybe depend on us. But we've also collected some fairly sticky ideas about who we are in the world, right? And those are sometimes the hardest things to shake.
There's often this huge pressure to live up to the societal beliefs, so even the goals that we've already hit, are often just societal goals. And then you come to this age. I mean, certainly I know this is for me, what you were saying now, we've all this stuff that we've done along the way. But was it really the stuff that we wanted to do? Or was it the stuff that was expected of us? Was it the stuff that society expected of us? Was it the stuff that you just do because that's the kind of path that everybody does and you don't want to be the weirdo?
And I love that question. And it's quite specific to our generation. Like other generations have struggled, of course, with the issues of midlife. The boomers have sort of notable caricatures about what they did in midlife. But I think what's interesting for women in Generation X, right, is that we were really told we could have it all. And that defined our expectations for ourselves from a very young age, right? And the truth is, it's very hard to have it all at the same time. And so typically our generation of women are quite burnt out, feel disappointed that they played by all the rules and they ran as hard as they could. And this sense of life satisfaction still eludes them, right? And there is often a very profound sense that who was I doing all of this for?
Right. So speak a little bit to you. You're making me think. I mean, so Lana's brought up a great point that it's what's expected of us. I think also that, a families, however you brought up and the environment you're brought up in, it's the values and also culture
Right.
that you're brought up in and your family values in particular. Do you run into that in your practice?
Oh, absolutely. We're very wired by what we grow up seeing around us and the messages that we receive about what's expected of us, right? What does success look like? Right? What does a good girl look like? What does an effective woman look like? What's a good mother? What's a good wife? Right? What's a good worker? And often for, again, women of our generation, the bucket of things that we feel we need to do to be, good spouses, good mothers is still full to the brim as if we were doing it full time. But then we're also supposed to be CEOs and we're also supposed to
Right.
be,
Yes. Yep.
we're also still supposed to look like 20-year-olds when we're 45. And it's a really very, it's impossible. It's an impossible standard. And so there's a chronic sense of falling short for a lot of our women in
Right.
this generation. And what I like to do with clients, just to return to your question, Rebecca, is to really get deep into the idea of whose story is that for you, right? Whose voice is that? Who's telling you that, I'm falling short if I don't make the Halloween costumes myself, or I'm falling short if my children don't get into the best university programs, or if my children are having mental health problems, is that, am I failing as a parent, right?
Right.
If I don't have an extremely close relationship with my own parents, what does that say about me as a person? If I'm not, if my parents have expectations that I'm going to be spending time with them every week, how do I do that and still have a very senior business career? Maybe I never wanted a senior business career and I'm sitting in an institutional employment thinking, I don't actually care about any of this, which sort of happened to me in my 40s, right? And I think it's really important. Therapy is a great way of doing this. There are other ways. I think everyone should do a little stint in therapy at some point or another, but it's a great place to reflect on what are the values you're carrying around and do they really belong to you?
Maybe they actually weren't your beliefs, but you just kind of rolled with it because that's what everyone else was doing it. That you really need to sit down and actually think about what are the things that you value at this point in your life, and what are the things that you want to believe in, and the direction and the goals that you want to achieve, because that's how you can kind of, you were saying that's how that can help you go through this transition.
I think it's a very important reflection for everyone to do, and it's a good time of life to do it, right? We talked a little bit about role-based identities versus a more flexible way of thinking about identity. So a role-based identity would be like, I'm a lawyer, right? I'm a doctor, I'm a wife, I'm a mother. I have these specific roles that I play in society, and I have a really clear idea about the components of that role. And I'm judging myself in terms of my performance in that role in a way, kind of like a performance evaluation. Like, did I tick enough boxes in that category today to get an A in that job? Right.
Yes, very much so.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see how that's like a recipe for self-loathing, essentially,
disaster.
Right?
Yes.
Disaster, right? Whereas an alternative is to sort of, and this is something I work with a lot of clients on, is to start to develop a more spacious idea of identity, which really and a flexible idea of identity, which grows out of what are your priorities? What are your values? What are your strengths? Right? What do you care about? And that allows us to change, right? It allows us to grow. It allows us to say, 5 years ago, my priorities were this, but actually they've shifted. And now I want to direct my energy in this way. And then it's not a failure, right? It's not, I no longer want to be this thing and everything I've invested in this role is now useless. It's, I developed, I grew a lot in that role when I did that. And my priorities and values have now shifted, and I'm going to take those strengths and I'm going to do something else with them.
When we get into the idea of career, are those skills, these are the skills, what's the word, like transitional skills? Transferable skills. Thank you, Lana. So those are particular, but you're saying in all aspects of our life, we can use those.
In all aspects of life. And actually, I have done career coaching with people, but I don't do a lot of that specifically because I do find that people have the answers. They just have to have permission, right? To think differently and more expansively about who they want to be in the world. I don't have a position about whether you should be a lawyer or not be a lawyer, or quit your job or whatever you should do. I have no idea, right? Actually deep down whether you should do that or not. And we do that by starting to explore, okay, who are you in the world? Who do you want to be in the world? What really matters to you? What do you like about being in this job? What really do you not like about being in this job? And maybe the things you don't like about being in this job are really a lot more internal to you. That is to say, you have so much self-doubt, you have so much self-criticism that even though the day-to-day work isn't so bad, you're just living in a constant reel of self-criticism. That we can work on without you changing your job, right? So it's usually it's not a binary answer.
It's not black or white.
There's this gray area that we have to address and embrace,
which makes it so much more difficult. I just want to know, like, is it X or is it Y? But it's not, because what I'm finding where I am now, it's like all these different things are coming up for me to do. Like, it's a speaker series. We're doing our podcast. I'm doing some, freelance modeling. I'm doing some writing. I'm doing some, and I kind of just want it to be one thing.
Right.
But do you?
Well, I guess it's also like, if you're looking at the person, like you were saying, the person that's worked in an institutional or a professional career, which is one thing, right? I've never done that. So maybe I'm kind of like, there's all these different things going on. So maybe in my mind, I'm thinking, that would just be easy. It probably wouldn't, but I don't know, because that's not really been my path. But I look at these people who are saying, I just want to get out of this. And I'm like, what? You got one job, you got healthcare, you got you got an IRA, you got a Roth, what are you talking about?
Right. So if you came to see me I think that's really interesting. Let's talk about the appeal to you of having one thing. Right? What does that represent to you? Right?
Stability.
Right. Stability. So how can we give you more stability? Right? What are the things you could do to get more stability in your life? Like if the craving is for
Yeah.
stability, let's not try to sub in something else for stability, right? If the craving's for stability, how can we give you more stability? Right? What does stability look like for you? What are some things that you could create in your life to make it feel like safer to you, more stable
Right.
to you, while still doing the things you enjoy doing, right?
Interesting.
This idea of sort of safety and stability, something that comes up a lot in our 50s. Is that what we're seeking more? I don't think in my 20s I was looking for stability and safety.
Well, it comes up throughout our lives, right? In our 20s, we don't think we're looking for that, but we sort of are, right? We're falling into relationships where we think, oh, this person feels comfortable to me. We're all of us as creatures in the world, we like a feeling of safety, right? When we're younger, we're looking for that in different ways. The safety might have to do with, how we feel connected to a social group, right? Or it might have to do with like landing on an educational or career path that makes us feel like we're going to be established someday.
Okay.
Right. So we're all looking for something that makes us feel like we're going to be okay in the world. Right.
Yeah.
Like we've landed on an identity, if you will. In 20s is a lot about trying to find our identity, right? And identity is a form of stability, right? We're trying to figure out, who are we? We want to land in a thing that we can identify as being us, and with a group of people that we can identify as being our people.
But do you think that, like, when, certainly when we come to this age, you're going through all this stuff, not, you're going through menopause as a woman, your kids are leaving home, your parents are getting older, your job is getting, you've been in most people the same job for X amount of time. So you're becoming, retirement's on the horizon, it's fairly close. Like, we're again going through that thing of trying to figure out who we are, because now we're someone completely different, and you have to figure all that out before you can figure out what it is you really want to do.
Yeah. So I like to get people off the idea of what I really want to do and into, who do I really want to be?
Nice.
Right? Because the do is actually a little bit of a cheat. The do is really a way of saying, of looking for outward markers of who I am.
Right.
Right? Like we all want jobs, to the extent we're working, right? We all want jobs that satisfy us, that make us feel like we're making a contribution to the world, that, get us some financial stability. But they really are, for a lot of us, kind of social capital, right? What I do tells people a lot about who I am. Right. So we actually want to get okay with who I am without having to talk about what we do necessarily. Now, the do piece is, how do I want to spend my time? What are my values? How much money do I need to earn? I actually am very happy to talk about money. Money is important, right? We actually need a certain amount of money and a stable kind of income to feel okay about where we're going, and particularly at this age. Not that most of us are going to retire on the same schedule as our parents, but we want to make sure that we're a little more forward focused than we've maybe been in the past about getting ready for a time when we won't be at peak earning, right? So all of that matters a lot, but it grows out of, who do I want to be at this moment of my life? Again, like, what are the priorities I'm pursuing? If financial independence is one of those priorities, then we can put that unashamedly at the center of the picture. And maybe our creative dreams or our sort of meaning and purpose objectives are happening outside of our main working hours. And that's okay too. It's a holistic picture, right?
So if I'm your client, do you tell me, or you say to me, what do you, how do you want to feel? Is that a good way, like on a daily basis? Or
if you're working with me, you're going to get asked how you feel a lot, right? So you're going to show up in my office and you're going to say, let's imagine, right? I feel stuck. I feel a lot of career dissatisfaction. And I'm going to say to you, tell me what that feels like. Right. And I'm going to try to get you a little bit better educated around what are your actual feelings and sensations in your body, and what are your ideas and beliefs that are floating around and dictating how you should feel. And for a lot of people, that's actually pretty difficult to do, and it takes some time to get better at it, right? So a lot of our work is about taking what you're bringing into the office on any given day that you feel something about, right? Like today, I feel incredibly frustrated about my job, and I feel like I've abandoned all my dreams and I'm never going to realize my potential. Let's say that's really present for you one day and you come in. We're going to talk about what that feels like. We're going to talk about like what that's attached to. What is it about your job that's making you feel that way? We're going to really pick it apart, right? I don't have an opinion about whether you should be in your job or not. I have no idea, but you have a lot of ideas about that, right? And you might have different kind of parts of yourself that are working against each other. You might have, there might be a part of you, this is a metaphor, right? Parts of self, but it's helpful sometimes to kind of tease out. You might have a part of yourself that's incredibly committed to staying in this job till retirement and pulling your pension out, right? And there'd be another part of you, assuming you're lucky enough to have one, but let's say you are, right? That's keeping you really stuck in a job that you don't love, but there's a certain income stream, or there's a pension, there's a something that's holding you there that you feel would be really irresponsible to let go of. There's another part of you that is desperate to leave, like would leave tomorrow if she could, because you have these really big dreams and you've always wanted to do X or Y, right? Run a nature preserve, write a novel, whatever, right? And so we're going to look at how do we meet all of those needs, because it's not stay or go, right? It's how do we preserve the economic imperatives that are really legitimately important to you, and allow you to start to open yourself up to some of these other dreams.
I know that you have had a few different career changes, but you're also, a best-selling author. So did you start, and I'm going to say that the novel writing to me feels like a very creative pursuit. You happen to make a living at it as well, which is great. But
I look like I make a living at it.
You've got a fabulous green shirt on. But did you start writing while you were doing these other jobs where you were, these, I'll call them the 9-to-5s? I mean, what was your journey?
Yeah, I did. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of safe risk. Okay. And I'm going to show you how that relates to my own path. So when someone feels stuck, I want to encourage them to start to invest a little bit of their emotional energy in a creative or a meaningful, right, activity that's adjacent to their dream, right? So in my case, so I have an English degree, right? I'd always been interested in writing. It was an early dream of mine to be a writer. But life is long and things happened, and I worked in publishing for a bit. I went to law school. I became a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I stayed in law for a long time because I went to work at the law school at U of T, and I worked in a couple of different positions there. But I ended up for 10 years running their fundraising and alumni relations office, and it was a senior business role, and I ran a $50+ million campaign, and it was really cool. But I got tired of doing it after a while. And so in the last few years I was there, and I was in my late 30s, early 40s, I started writing a novel. Because I had, around the age of 40, you may remember this, right? That suddenly everyone has that kind of desire to do a big thing at 40. And a lot of people start doing these weird acts of like physical extremity, like marathoning and climbing mountains. And my version of that was writing a novel. So I quietly thought to myself, I can just do this quietly. Like, I don't even have to tell anyone and no one has to notice. But I did hire a babysitter for 3 hours every Sunday afternoon for about like 3 years. And I wrote a novel in that time. And it had some ups and downs, but the long and the short is it got published ultimately by a traditional publisher, and it became a bestseller. And that was like weird and wonderful and changed my life in some ways. But, being a best-selling author in Canada is not like a recipe for financial freedom. I'm sorry. So I do other things, right?
No.
So, and I left for a while. My kids had some health issues, so I was home with my kids for a number of years. I got divorced, and I was home with my kids, and I was writing, kind of part-time, and published a couple more books. And then I went back to school to become a psychotherapist because I wanted, I staged it, right? I staged it. And so all the way along, it was kind of safe risks. Like there was never a day where I quit my job with nothing else to do. When I left the law school, I had a best-selling book and a contract for another book. And I also had some consulting work, right? So it was always kind of an incremental path. And then, while I was in school part-time, I was always still writing, producing books. And, so it was a long-term plan, and the path branched as I went. And I'm like, if you imagine yourself, like you're standing in the middle of a clearing in the woods, right? And you can see everything in the clearing, and the clearing feels safe and secure, but the clearing also feels pretty limiting to you, right? And you can't know, like you have to choose a path out, right? And you can't know everything that lies along that path. You can just know that the path will branch. And as you go along it, you will have more options, right? And you will have to keep choosing. But as long as you're in the clearing, you're just in the clearing, right? So you have to move a little bit and expect that there will be unknown things that come up, but also that you have the ability to choose and that you have to trust yourself to make good choices as you go.
I love that. I love that. I mean, just for me to even use that as a meditation, and just know that you're going to be okay if you step out of that clearing. And like you said, you just make some more decisions, and you'll just keep taking, one step and then another step and then another step, But I do think, sort of circling back, there is expectations. And I do feel like that is really hard. So, I am not a CEO, but I do have a couple of very close girlfriends that we went to high school together, who are working. I know Lana's at the same. We have friends who are doing these massive jobs and running these big companies, or, doctors, lawyers, whatever it is, and they're, even though they have these big jobs, they still have some of these feelings like, oh, I should have spent more time doing this, or, they're feeling like they wish they had more time for their health, or they wish that they had more time for their kids. Or so I feel like it's also about accepting and becoming satisfied with the idea that, what, everybody's got their own journey and has got to get out of that clearing somehow.
I mean, that's human nature. You're always comparing yourself to someone else, but, oh, well, they did that, or, they've reached this milestone and why haven't I? But I guess, one of the things we'd spoken about was investigating our own happiness and how do we get to our own happiness. And there's so many different ways to do that. And they're not going to be the same for everybody, but if you stay in the one place, stuck, like you said, in that clearing, you're definitely not getting anywhere.
Right. Do you know the expression comparison is the thief of joy? Does that?
Wow, no, I don't, but that is very true.
Yeah. So I find that quite powerful because it's true, right? And, it's pretty simple, and without my telling you, you'll know what they are, right? So it's like positive relationships, it's health, it's having a sense of meaning and purpose in your life, feeling like you're contributing in some important way. That might be spiritually, but it might also just be feeling like you do something that benefits the community. It's like positive emotions, right? Like, how do we make sure that we're getting a good dose of joy and relaxation and amusement, right, in our life? It's engagement, like those flow states, like feeling there are things that we get really excited about. And accomplishment does matter, right? It's feeling like whatever it is that we do, that we've done well at it. So relating back to this idea of our own values and priorities, everyone's going to make that calculation differently, right? So your friend that's, the managing partner of a law firm, that's an accomplishment, presumably that's very important to that person, and that they get meaning out of contributing to the development of the law or mentoring young lawyers or whatever it is. And you might make that calculation quite differently, right?
I would like to be a managing partner of the law firm, quite frankly.
You really wouldn't. Trust me.
I know, fancy business card. That's what, you know what I mean? You have big title. Everybody would look at me and think, wow, she must be really smart. She's a lawyer.
That's right.
Right.
Okay. So here's a pointed observation. Okay. Which is that happiness is really an inside job. Right. So whether other people think your business card is cool, I'm making fun, right? But it doesn't actually generate much in the way of happiness, except the day you get it and people are like, that's cool. And you feel some positive emotions around that. And then suddenly something sets in that's called hedonic adaptation, right? Which is that you don't get the same buzz on day 2 and even less on day 3 and day 4. And soon the business card is just something that takes up space in your wallet, right? Because it's an accomplishment and we can enjoy it, but that in and of itself, other people's reaction to our accomplishment doesn't do much for us.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about, just sort of wrapping things up a little bit, but tips and tricks. People are considering a big transition or a shift in their life, especially people who are in, our generation, the 50 plus range. What do you say to them? I mean, how can they start this? How can they make this come through? What do they do?
Okay, so a couple of things I want to say about it. The first is, if it's within your means, do a little stint of therapy, because I really think therapy, if nothing else, it creates a space for you to honestly engage with your own belief system, right? I think that's really important for life transitions. But at-home tips and tricks, I would say, I think creativity is a really important driver of change. As adults, we get very caught up in what other people think and the shoulds, right? We all carry a big suitcase of shoulds around with us about how we should be spending our time. And creativity becomes kind of one elective that we take, that we drop when we go to university, and we just don't do it. One of my things that I think is really important for me to do in this world is to make creativity more accessible for people. So you don't have to be a really talented landscape painter or Highland dancer or novelist to be a creative person, right? We're all creative people, and creativity really is an adult form of play. Right.
Yes.
And so as long
not like that, Rebecca, not like that. That's another talk.
Well, that too. Yeah. But as long as we're imagining ourselves in new ways, right? That's creative. So you're going to give yourself permission to do something creative that appeals to you. The idea is that it makes you feel joyful to think about doing it, right? I'm not telling you have to go do something like it's a homework assignment. No, I want you to feel like, oh, it's my 15 minutes to do the thing I want to do. That's the feeling we're chasing. Okay, so do that. And then in a similar vein, I want you to explore the idea of safe risks. Okay, so safe risks, the opposite of a safe risk is an unsupported risk, where we're just going to be like, I can't stand you people anymore. I quit and I have no plan. Right? Safe risk. Okay. So we're not throwing ourselves off the cliff with no safety net. What we're doing is we're starting to take incremental steps, right? So a different version of that might be, I'm going to go to the career center at the place where I work and sign up for a course on a new skill that I want to develop, right? Or it might be, I'm going to sign up for something else that helps me explore this part of myself that I think I kind of left behind. And when I dream at night, I imagine that child doing that thing, and I wish that I'd spent more time doing it. It feels like the road not taken. Okay, how can you safely explore that for an hour a week and see, do you still really love that thing? You're pushing out of your comfort zone just a little bit in a direction that calls to you, and it's an experiment. Okay, you might not end up liking that thing. That's fine. Then we do a new experiment with something else. Safe. Those are my 2 takeaways for you.
Got it.
I like that. I like the safety and the creativity, but especially that idea of a safe risk, because that is really why most people don't change the position that they're in, because they just see it as too scary, too different, too other. And if you can do it incrementally, you know what I mean? Then you're just kind of dipping your toe in, and then you really know whether you like it, you don't like it, and you can kind of get to that place knowing that you'll be okay because you've done it in a slower way.
It's the first step out of the clearing. Okay. You can still see the clearing. You've still got a foot in the clearing, but you're able to look into the woods a bit, right? That's what we're looking for.
I think I'm going to draw when we're finished, the clearing and the woods around it and the path.
Great.
That's what I would.
that for you.
I like to have this visual map of where
The clearing, the woods, the path. It's a book title right there. There you go.
Yeah, eat, pray, love, here I come.